Danny Phantom, he was just 14 when his parents built a very strange machine. It was designed to view a world unseen. He's gonna catch 'em all 'cause he's Danny Phantom. When it didn't quite work, his folks, they just quit. But then Danny took a look inside of it. There was a great big flash, everything just changed. His molecules got all rearranged. When he first woke up, he realized he had snow white hair and glowing green eyes. He could walk through walls, disappear, and fly. He was much more unique than the other guy, and it was then that he knew what he had to do. He had to stop all the ghosts that were coming through. He's here to fight for me and you. He's gonna catch 'em all 'cause he's Danny Phantom. He's gonna catch 'em all 'cause he's Danny Phantom. He's gonna catch 'em all 'cause he's Danny Phantom.
Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing my personal favorite episode of Danny Phantom. Fanning the Flames, story by Steve Marmel, written by Marty Isenberg, and directed by Wincat Alcala, Juli Hashiguchi, and Butch Hartman. And of course, the show is created by Butch Hartman. And what a delight revisiting this show. I can tell you specifically the last time I watched it, which was in 2018, when I was a guest on the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast with Casey and Ashley. That was my first time ever doing a podcast, and they invited me on, which was very nice, and I got to choose any Nicktoon episode I wanted to discuss, and I chose an episode of Danny Phantom because they weren't exactly big fans of it, and I figured, well, let me show them an episode that I personally like, that I think they would enjoy. And the episode I chose for that was Memory Blank, the season 2 premiere, because that one goes more into the day Danny got his powers, even though it's all there in the theme song. But what a great theme song, man. I love that theme song. He's a phantom, Danny Phantom, young Danny Phantom. He was just 14. I'm not going to sit here and sing it, but I may or may not have sung along when I was watching this episode. Of course I sung along. And I gotta say, this show premiered when I was 13 years old, and at that point I was kind of moving away from Nickelodeon. It had been, like, honestly, I wasn't really watching Nickelodeon. That was when I was really more into anime, and this show, though, for whatever reason, caught my attention because I knew right away, seeing the commercials for it, that it looked so similar to The Fairly Odd Parents, and of course it's the same creator, Butch Hartman, and I was intrigued enough to watch it. I remember watching it. It premiered on April 3rd, 2004. It premiered after the Kids' Choice Awards, and I remember watching it. I was in my room with my sister. My brother may have been there too, but I could just tell you, this is so specific and so random, but just sometimes random things come back to me that are just so specific that I otherwise wouldn't have ever thought about until rewatching this episode now. But I can tell you specifically, so when it premiered, the episode Mystery Meat, the moment that just made me kind of really fall in love with the show for whatever reason, it's the part when Sam and Tucker are protesting. If you recall, when Sam wanted the menu change with the ultra cyclo vegetarian and Tucker wanted to keep meat on the menu. And so then they're both protesting. So you got the people who want to keep meat and the people who want the vegetarian menu. And then Danny just says, you guys put together 2 protests in one night? Because so that's the specific moment when I personally just kind of fell in love with Danny as a 13-year-old. I don't know. I do know why. It's the reason because, gosh, I don't know if you find this, like, interesting. I hope you do. But anyway, the reason was because I remember watching it and being like, they're protesting. And then when he said protests, I was like, oh, we're on the same page. Oh my God. You have to understand that with this podcast, sometimes I admit things I wouldn't ever otherwise admit out loud. Like, for instance, when I was thirsty over a certain anime character, when I discussed Yu-Gi-Oh! The Dark Side of Dimensions. Although, in all fairness, I'm far from being the only one who is thirsty for that character, who, of course, is Seto Kaiba, but I'm going off topic. So now, like, I'm getting embarrassed, but it's all in good fun. Revisiting your cartoon crushes as a young teen. So I could tell you, though, now, rewatching this episode that I hadn't seen in a long time, that now I just kind of find Danny, very dorky and, like, it's just funny how it's just, I don't know. But he's a great protagonist. I gotta say, Sam, though, and I definitely said this when I was on the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast, that she's the best character on this show, hands down. The most competent, the smartest, the one who just is kind of above everything in a way, but just like her own individual person, very opinionated. And I just shipped Danny and Sam so much, just kind of right from the get-go when they were saying, I'm not his girlfriend, she's not my girlfriend in Mystery Meat, in the pilot of this show. But I love this episode specifically because it kind of just really was more of a focus of Danny and Sam. And I watched this with my cousins, and my cousin and I were the same age, so her also being 13 at the time, we were just in love with Danny, and we made inside jokes, but they weren't even inside jokes, but we would reference specifically from the episode 2, the season 1 episode 2, parental bonding, when that, with the amulet, and then Paulina puts it on, and then she turns into a dragon, and then she puts it on, take your crummy amulet, she puts it on Sam, and then Sam goes, shallow little witch. So we referenced that all the time. We said it was an inside joke, even though it's not an inside joke. It's just us quoting the show. And we also loved in the 3rd episode, One of a Kind, with Danny, say something, boo, I am a ghost, fear me, with the whatever that was, because his parents, of course, being ghost hunters. It's so funny with that ghost translator thing. But anyway, I'm already digressing to other episodes, but also I remember watching with my cousins, specifically My Brother's Keeper, and that's the episode when Jazz finds out about Danny's powers, so that's a great one too. So this one, though, is just so cute and sweet, and since this is early on in the series, this is before Danny got that classic emblem on his whatever uniform, his ghost uniform, the D with the P inside. That's a really great logo too. And that was put there specifically because they wanted to make merchandise of Danny and whatever, so, for this show. But gosh, I was in love with this show. I was in love with Danny, and, I was in love with Danny in his ghost form, and I thought Danny Fenton was cute, but I thought Danny Phantom was hot, so my cousin too. Anyway, so to move on from that, though, let's actually get into the episode. So it opens with them in the ghost zone, Danny, Sam, and Tucker. And that reminds me, too, I love that other episode when they first encounter the ghost zone. What's it called? Oh, Prisoners of Love, when they first meet Skulker. There's a lot of great villains in this show. Of course, the main one being Vlad Plasmius? No, well, that's his ghost name. Vlad Masters. Jack's old college, was he his roommate? His old college friend who then was in love with Maddie. So weird, but anyway. It's unfortunate the show didn't have more episodes because it had a total of 3 seasons, 53 episodes. It ran from 2004 to 2007. I will say, by the 3rd season, I honestly was kind of over the show. I still watched every episode, though, and I remember the ending, I think, is great. They really did a good job bringing back all of the villains, which I think was clever, and then Danny finally revealing that he is, in fact, Danny Phantom, which to me, I always thought, how can you not tell that Danny Fenton is Danny Phantom? But whatever, it just seems so obvious. But him finally revealing his identity, and of course Danny and Sam finally getting together. And I'm a sucker for friends falling in love trope. Although a more interesting relationship in this show, it was explored a little bit, was Danny and Valerie. Because then Valerie had a crush on Danny, but then she was trying to hunt Danny Phantom. And then you had Danny who had a crush on Paulina. But then Paulina, though, had a crush on Danny Phantom, not Danny Fenton. So that was clever, too, how they had a, love triangle thing going on. And Sam always had a thing for Danny from the beginning. But, there really was no subtlety with that at all. It's just very, in this episode, too, it's just kind of, okay, it's they're both blushing. They're both trying to kind of deny the fact that they secretly like each other, I think. But Danny's obviously more dense with that, more clueless a little bit. And Tucker was always in the know. Tucker always knew that Sam had a crush on Danny. So, whatever. So even though that's all interesting, I'm still glad, though, that Danny and Sam ended up together, though. It's just still very sweet. Okay, so getting into the episode now with them in the ghost zone, and Danny is fighting that random ghost Klemper, who to me is giving off very much Lenny vibes, Lenny from Of Mice and Men, I just gotta say. And then they got the Fenton phones, which is a clever little gadget. And I think that's funny, too, that I think it's with Jack and Maddie. They both invent these ghost hunting devices. I'm pretty sure it's both of them because they're a team. And the Fenton thermos, obviously when he catches all the ghosts, all of these things they invent. And obviously with the ghost portal, that didn't work until Danny just conveniently pressed a button to turn it on, but whatever. So when he fights off that ghost, and then Tucker is belting out Ember's song Remember, which is a great song, though, I gotta say. Honestly, I remember listening to the full version of it, and the full version is available on YouTube. And Actually, though, so Ember is voiced by Tara Strong, who, of course, voice of Timmy Turner and hundreds of other cartoon characters. But the singing voice for Ember is actually Robin Kermsey, who, in fact, I didn't know this, but then when I looked it up because I was just curious, she actually also did the singing voice for Penny from Chalk Zone. I didn't know that. I always thought actually that the singing voice for Penny was just E.G. Daly doing the voice. But so there's a little fun fact for you that she also did the singing voice for another Nicktoon. So I think she's a great villain. And it's clever with the whole thing that you gotta, like, when they chant her name, she becomes stronger. It gives off, like, the kind of vibe of Tinkerbell, like you have to clap for her, cheer for her, otherwise she'll die. It's like that kind of. It's interesting. So then you got the first instance of Danny saying, oh, can ghosts get frostbite? And then Sam saying, oh, here, my hands are warm. And then they just blatantly blush. And then, of course, Tucker has, like, the, breaking up the whole moment there, saying, Amber, what? Like, Tucker, your screeching voice. Tucker is funny, though, I have to say. I was hard on Tucker when I was with the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast, like, when I was talking about it with Casey and Ashley, because in general, Tucker's just kind of an annoying character to me, but he does have his moments, I will say. If there's anything I admire about Tucker, truly, it's just his undeserved sense of confidence. Honestly, like, despite being such a geek, for better or worse, that he's just confident with who he is. So good for him that it doesn't matter to him. He just, like, thinks he's cool, he thinks he's funny, he thinks he's got it, like, going on, but, so it's just funny. And obviously he's a loyal friend and everything with Danny and Sam, so they're a great little trio, the three of them. I think also this episode does a good job of balancing out the ghost stuff with the classic teenage tribulation. So in this case, the whole school is just in love with Ember, just like she's the biggest craze. And some of the dialogue in this show is a little kind of cringy, like Danny saying, oh, so this Ember is the biggest thing since MP3s, like, goodness, I don't know. But Danny's a good protagonist, though, because he didn't want these powers. He got them accidentally, but then he knows what he has to do. He's to stop all the ghosts from coming through. Yeah, God, I can't resist with that. I love that theme song. But that's part of his growth as a character, of gaining more control of his powers and also just protecting, like, even though it's unknowing that he's protecting people from these ghosts, all these evil ghosts that just kind of infiltrate Amity Park. That's why Ember's a great character, though, because just her clear motivation of wanting to just rule everyone. So she's kind of hypnotizing them with her one song, Remember. But it's a great song. It's honestly a sad song, too. It's just, like, has sad lyrics to it that, like, after a breakup, it's a good song. Still slays, that song, I gotta say. And also, gotta love Lancer, Mr. Lancer. I think he's a great underrated character, too. He's so funny. I did distinctly remember all of his, like, when he just shouts random novel titles. In this one he says, Lord of the Flies, Chicken Soup for the Soul, and Pride and Prejudice. So it's so funny. And I could tell you, even though I hadn't seen this episode in so long, that just certain jokes, I already remembered them, and then they still made me laugh, though, I gotta say, which that's always fun. So they have to do, like, their standardized test, it's like the whole school for some reason, the Northwestern standardized test. And Lancer is just saying that your grades affect my bonus, so you're gonna have to, like, cram for these tests. It's just funny because why can't they then just use those screens, like, use that computer program to teach? Like, why do you need the teachers then in that case just to cram for this one test, for all this knowledge in their brains? And it's so funny on the chalkboard behind Lancer, which says, learning is hip. So, true, learning is hip, goodness. Then Ember shows up with her one song blaring again, and they all just, like, jump out the window, the kids, like, run out of the school. Like, gosh. Then Danny's like, oh, Ember's the ghost. Like, and he's like, oh, I gotta save Lancer. Man, this is bittersweet. I don't get, though, he just transforms right there out in the open, but just, I guess no one notices, honestly, because they're just all focused on Ember. And I love when Tucker says, we love you, Ember. And she says, that's because I fill a void in your empty lives. You're right, Ember. Like, so with the same enthusiasm, just, you're right, Ember. So funny. Oh my gosh. I also love, actually, though, when Lancer, like, is standing on a fire hydrant and then he's got his megaphone, he says, freakishly dressed pop star, or whatever. Like, it's just so funny. And then afterwards, Sam and Danny are talking, and then Danny's saying, I don't understand how come you and I aren't affected. And then Sam's like, maybe because of and then he's like, your intelligence? And I was going to say, utter disdain for all things popular, whatever she says. Like, you really think I'm smart? And they just, they're cute. And then everyone keeps calling them lovebirds. They are lovebirds. Don't deny Danny and Sam. But Lancer saying, if you two lovebirds may be the only ones in school, but it's not going to stop me from giving you an education. I don't understand why it's him against the entire school. Where are the other teachers? Where's the principal for that matter? Why is it just poor Lancer having to deal with all of these Ember-obsessed teenagers? Gotta respect Lancer for that. I do find it kind of a little odd, or maybe just convenient, that Jazz is also a fan of Ember too, because she doesn't seem like she would be Jazz, Danny's older sister, because she just doesn't seem like she'd be into that, She's kind of more always into her studies and like just more mature, almost to an annoying degree with Danny, that she thinks she's so much more mature than she actually is. So Danny and Sam is Danny and Sam. Danny and Jazz is a nice dynamic, that brother-sister dynamic, but Danny and Sam are just so cute, honestly. So then when they escape, because he just takes her hand and then they turn invincible and they fly out. And I remember I loved this moment as a 13-year-old when she looks up at him and then she's like, has like the lovesick look on her face. He's like, flying's nice, falling stinks. And he blushes and they crash. But I remember I would say as a kid, as a teen, watching it at the time for the first time as a 13-year-old with my cousins, thinking, well, we already knew she likes him though, like, because it seemed as if in that moment that she realizes it, like she's like, and then like she's looking at him like she's love struck, but that we already knew that as an audience. That was kind of just established from the beginning, kind of, because again, there's really no subtlety there. It's just kind of they hit you over the head with it throughout this episode too. I will say, so there's a lot that I don't like about the final season of this show, because they kind of changed the tone of it, and it just kind of, it already felt like we already saw these same villains, and like they already had their returning episodes, kind of like, what else can you do with this? Besides like other stuff that was good, besides like the finale. But one thing I didn't like was how it felt a little so fan servicey with Danny and Sam, honestly, that it didn't feel organic the way it was going with the two of them, I don't know how to explain it, that like that episode when they go into, like, they keep seeing each other's dreams, and then Danny and Sam have like the same dream, and he's like, her dream is just like mine, like that episode, and it just seemed so kind of forced, I guess, in a way, that they already clearly were into each other, but then just weren't saying anything at that point until the very end. But all that said, I love all the times when they kiss. The first time is the fake out, make out in the episode when like Valerie gets more of a prominent role in Shades of Grey. And then afterwards, Tucker's like, you guys kiss? And like, no, it was a fake out, make out. And then they also do a fake out, make out again in Memory Blank, because first Sam initiated it, then Danny did in that one. Then they have a real kiss, though, in the series finale, Phantom Planet, and they get together, too. He gives her that ring. First she thought it was Wes. Who the heck is Wes? And then, nope, it's for Sam. It was upside down, but goodness. But I remember, like, that kiss was just, like, it was, I don't know, it was well choreographed. And I remember thinking that, just kind of the way he lifts her chin, he just takes her face in his hands, like brushes back her hair, they kiss, and it's just very, very sweet. And then when they get together in the end, it's just very, very, very cute. But I apologize, I'm jumping all over the place about just Danny and Sam, but also, just since I'm just on this tangent, I love the episode too when that kid Elliot, like that random kid, no, his name was Gregor, but then it turns out his name was Elliot, who was just moving in on Sam, and then it turns out he was I forget, that was like weird, that kid. But then when at one point he asked Danny, it's like, do you have feelings for Sam? And then he's like, well, he just doesn't answer or whatever. And then at the end, when Danny's saying, oh, how could he not have liked you? You're smart and pretty. And then she blushes and he says, why am I still talking? I'm such a spaz. So, and also I remember the episode too with the urban jungle when she is taken over by like evil plants, and then at the end when he gives her that crystal and he's like, I'm glad you're okay. And they just have like a moment where they smile. I guess what I'm saying is that I liked those sweet, small moments between them, not kind of the forced stuff later on in the final season of this show. But if the show had continued, though, they would have still been in high school and them, I guess, trying to navigate their new relationship. So that would have been cute to see. And this show could come back one day. You never know. You never know. I mean, everything gets rebooted in a way, so who knows. But anyway, so I hope you're enjoying these tangents. I'll try to stay more focused on this episode. But so then, the whole thing with them chanting Ember's name, and then she does the whole, like, the banter too, like dipstick. I don't see how that's an insult, or how about a love song? And then, of course, we later learn that Sam isn't affected because of the Fenton phones, but it's just so funny with Danny who's got the hearts around him. And then when she's like gonna fall off the building, it's like, I never realized you're really pretty when you're about to fall off a building. Like, okay, Danny, goodness. And then she's like, wait, that's the same puppy dog longing look you give Paulina. Who's Paulina? That's a nice side effect. Then it's so funny when, again, just Lancer, kudos to Lancer for really just staying on top of this whole situation. Then a SWAT team arrives, and then these SWAT guys are just like chucking these teens into the truck. Like, goodness, so funny. Like, you're all being placed under house arrest. But that, of course, doesn't stop all these kids from just escaping then to go to this midnight concert. Why is it midnight? And just to telegraph around the entire world, too. So then the entire world's going to be chanting her name. The entire world knows about Ember. Just, okay, sure. With her one song, Remember. That's it. But it is an amazing song, though. So anyway. But there's also that one scene with the parents, Maddie and Jack. They're so funny when she's like, no, Jack, we can't lock up the kids in this medieval thing, which, it's a Fenton stockade. And then she locks him up in there. He's like, I meant them. So ridiculous. And then Sam shows up, and I love that joke too. And Danny's like, Sam, this is just like Romeo and Juliet, except I'm the one on the balcony and I can understand everything we're saying. That's cute, this whole scene when she's saying, I don't really feel that way about you. You don't really feel that way about me. So why are you holding my hands? And why are you still wearing those Fenton phones? And then she realizes, this is why I'm not affected by Ember's music. And then she's like, we gotta go. Oh my gosh, Tucker. And they left Tucker there the whole time, watching the computer, so getting all that knowledge into his brain. So it's just ridiculous. He's like, I knew you two would end up together. She's like, no, we're not together. He just thinks, it's Ember put him under a spell. And he's like, so you don't want to end up together? And she's like, maybe, but not like this. Kudos to her for being honest in that moment. But obviously she's kind of not ready to admit that really, but it's cute. So I think it's so funny to them when they, like, Tucker, like when he's saying, the train going, whatever. And he's like, wow, I spent the first 9 years of my academic life actually reading. Like, oh, goodness. But when they break in and then, like, they're trying to get rid of the power or whatever, and, like, Tucker's doing that, and then Sam says, like, we'll stay here and watch. And then Sam says to Danny, can you just stop, like, watch anything but me? And he just has a picture of her. That's funny too. And then the part also when, what's his name? Dash. That's it. Dash Baxter and Quan. They're just there too. They're like, we love you, Ember. She's like, I heard you the 12th time. Like, goodness. But then when Sam's saying, Danny, you gotta, like, go save everyone. You gotta stop Ember. He's like, I won't leave you, Sam. And then she does. It's like, I gotta break your heart, Danny. And then she turns around and kisses Dash. And it's just so funny when he's like, she tastes like geek. And she says, he tastes like failure. That's a savage burn right there. My goodness, that's so funny. But that's great. And then poor Danny's like, no, I feel like my heart's been ripped out. Like, oh, goodness. Then when he transforms and he blasts off. And then Sam just has that moment of when she smiles and brushes her hair back. Just that prideful look on her face. Because that's sweet too. That's sweet that she and Tucker are always there to help Danny as much as they can with his, ghostly adventures and everything of saving the town, really. So then it's clever too, like with, Ember's hair flaring out with them chanting, and then Danny saying, I gotta make them, like, stop cheering, and then Tucker, take the mic and sing, and he sings atrociously and people stop singing. And then she just collapses. So it's great, And again, though, it's like, no, whatever. He just sucks her up in the thermos. No one seems to care or whatever. And then it's funny when he stops singing, then everyone cheers again. That's great, too. Then it's cute when Danny transforms back. And she's like, Danny, that was so awesome. And then she's like, I guess Ember's spell hasn't totally worn off yet. And of course, Tucker always there to keep her in line. You're never under Ember's spell. She just elbows him. That's cute too. And then it's clever too at the ending then when Lanter's saying, oh, you all did terrible on these tests, but fortunately one of you got a perfect score, Tucker Foley, so you're excused. Like that. So then this is good news for my bonus. That's so funny too. This is an example of irony. And then some nerdy girl saying, we love you, Tucker. So he's got his groupies too. I had forgotten about that. So that was funny too. And then we see Ember with the guy again, Klemper, and he's saying, Ember, Ember, stop saying my name. That's a great ending too. So it's just a great episode, a good balance of the ghostly aspect of it with the action. That's like a good balance of this show in general, with the action, with the like tribulations of high school, and then of like with a little bit of romance, just a dash of it, just a little bit of it. So so it's just really cute. And I will say, I remember honestly watching that first episode and being impressed with the more of the detail of the animation and the art style compared to Fairly Odd Parents. Though it's a similar art style, obviously, but like the characters have more detail to them. And the lighting I thought was cool. How you see like the blue light on the character when, you know, like the background changes and then, you know, Danny's got to kick ghost butt, you know, like just stuff like that I thought was cool. And again, I love Danny and Sam. Very, very cute. Very sweet. Even with Danny and his cluelessness and Sam kind of being stubborn. But, you know, it's very cute. I'm glad that they ended up together. And you will remember my name. And with that, that's going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. Be sure to visit storytellingsaga.com and feel free to send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by emailing me at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, I'm so excited to say that I will be interviewing actor and writer Marin Miller. You may know them as the voice of Athena, Alecto, and Tisiphone in the Hades games. I'm really excited to chat with them, talk about voice acting and writing and anime. It's going to be a lot of fun. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.